This first lesson is for you if you're a self-taught guitarist, because you are probably making the mistakes I'm going to tell you about right now. So let's talk about them, and then let's throw them immediately out of our heads for life, because they're really terrible things to be doing. So first, the first and biggest mistake everybody makes when they are teaching themselves to play chords is they build the chord backwards. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a C chord, for example. So if I'm making a C chord, which looks like this and sounds like this, I might be tempted to build it with my first finger, then my second finger, then my third finger. Now the problem with this is, in what direction do I strum? I strum from low to high, right? And in what direction am I going to play if I'm even playing fingerstyle? Same thing. It usually starts with the thumb and then moves to higher notes. So no matter how you slice it, you need to build the chord the opposite way, from low to high. Now eventually, of course, the goal is to make the entire chord at once. But as you're building them one finger at a time, as you're getting comfortable with the chord, you heard it here first, you want to build it from low to high, not backwards. The next mistake that everybody makes when they're playing chords is they forget to think about how many strings you're supposed to strum. And that depends and changes on which chord you're playing. For example, with the C chord, you're supposed to play 5 strings. Now it's not the end of the world if you accidentally hit that 6th string in there. It doesn't sound too bad, but it's a little bit muddy, right? And if we're doing a D chord, it's going to get even muddier because a D chord only needs 4 strings. Now watch what happens when I strum all 6. It's a little bit muddy. So make sure you pay attention to those little X's you see on the chord charts and try to obey that right away. That'll also get you a much better sense of how to play a chord, whether you're strumming or plucking. Okay, now the third mistake, this one's a little back and forth for me because it's not the end of the world, and sometimes it can be an advantage, but I will just give it as a warning, and that is, watch out for hanging your thumb too far over the neck. This can be a tool that actually works as your advantage sometimes, but in the case of when you're starting out learning how to switch chords, it's just going to be something that makes your left hand clunkier. So as an example, and if you've done any workshops with me, you've probably heard me talk about this before, but if your wrist is bent backwards like this, you don't have as much mobility and you can't stretch your fingers apart. So you need your wrist to be nice and straight so you have much more mobility. So if you're a guitarist who's having trouble reaching a chord or stretching your fingers out, and this happens a lot with a C chord and an F chord, if you can't quite reach those, it's probably because your thumb's hanging out too far and it's throwing your hand out of whack. So just drop your thumb behind the neck a little bit and it helps you stretch your fingers out quite a bit. So there you have it. 3 tips of mistakes that you might be making. Ask yourself, am I making any of those mistakes? If you are, identify it and throw it out the window. And we're going to stop doing that from here on out, and I'm going to show you the right way to do it in the next lesson.